We're going to get started. We have a great schedule this afternoon. I'm glad that you're here with us because of all these great speakers that we have. Just to run down what we're going to do this afternoon, we have there again a whole sequence of great speakers. Our first speaker, Quebecois, Quebec, Canada, and she has, oh my God, such a list. She's a commercial beekeeper, a queen raiser, raises 4,000 or 5,000 queens a year. She's on the Canadian Honey Council. She's working on the masters at Laval. Anyway, she is going to give us a perspective from her part of our friends to the north. I'd like to introduce you to Maggie Boudreau.
Thank you, Jerry, for the introduction. So I'm glad we're all taking this 2-day journey together, because that means we're all in bees together. Now, through my presentation, I hope I can help you grasp the utmost importance of these few words for the beekeeping industry and for the hives themselves. Now, first of all, I'm in there a little table of contents, and it's very short because I hate long table of contents, and I wanted you guys to know where we're going with this presentation. So, how, what, and why. How did I become a beekeeper? What actions am I taking in beekeeping and in the beekeeping industry? And why am I doing all this? I'll start by how. So, how did I become a beekeeper? I have very humble origins. I'm not a 3rd, 4th, 5th generation beekeeper. I started from scratch. I was talking to a friend of mine a few weeks ago, and he asked me, so where are you from? Genuinely, I don't know. I don't know where I'm from. And you're going to be like, what? That's not possible. Yes, it is. My dad was in the military, and we just moved every 3 to 4 years in Canada. So I was born in Ontario, and that's where I probably learned most of my English. We moved to New Brunswick, where my brother was born there. And through these moves, well, my buddy told me, he said, wow, that was really hard. And I had to think about that too, because some people might think it was a curse, but in hindsight, I think it was a blessing. Yes, as I already told you, I learned my English, but I also noticed that there are good people everywhere. And I think that's important to remember. So I learned a lot of resilience through all of these moves. And I also had to find myself an outlet, because every time we moved, I lost my friends. I didn't put that little picture up there of my 2 friends that I still have with me today. And they are very dear to me, so Saliane and Veronique. But I lost most of my primary school friends. So I was talking to you guys about my outlet. Every time we moved, I loved to explore. So I ended up exploring forests, fields, and started finding or discovering the world of little critters. Frogs, snakes. That's a picture of me. I was probably about 13, and that's a little snake in my hands. Don't worry, don't worry. We don't have poisonous snakes in Canada, so yeah, so that was kind of my first outlet. Through the years, we moved, and I ended up working. We moved closer to my uncles in south of Quebec, and I worked on a few of their farms. So that little love for critters had started, and working on my uncle's farms, I started noticing that the bugs had a parasitic or a deleterious impact on their farms. So that got me thinking about, wow, there's a whole universe of bugs, and they're really affecting my uncle's productions and crops. What can I do about that? How can I manage this, and how can I help them? And that's when I went to college in natural sciences and went to City you're in tier. And the guy told me, look, you're really manual. You love touching and manipulating things. I don't think you should go to university. And I was like, no, you don't understand. I really want to go to university to find a way to help my uncles. And that's when he took out 2 different paths for me, biology or agronomy. I picked agronomy, and when I started in those years, I started in 2005, there were mostly men in that bachelor's degree. So we were at the most maybe 30% women at the time. And I had to break a few barriers going through that bachelor's degree, because when I lifted my hand looking for work during the summer times, I learned afterwards that men were privileged in those jobs. So I managed to find a job on a producer's co-op, where every time I got to the producer's farm, they were all surprised to see this little lady here jumping out of that huge truck, because I was carrying loads of fertilizer to their farms. So I was pretty proud of myself and telling them, yep, the little lady here. Yep. So I finished with a minor in crop production and a major in crop production and a minor in entrepreneurship. Little did I know that minor in entrepreneurship would be so useful in later years. What next? I finished in 2009 my bachelor's degree and ended up in environmental sciences, where I would help producers protect watersheds, so rivers, ponds, lakes that would be on their farms. I would go and walk those with them and find plans to be able to save the riverbanks and to stop sediment and pesticides reaching the waters. Why did we do that? Yes, to save the fish, but it was also to save the aquatic insects, which I learned about mostly through these 5 to 6 years I was an agronomist. Through those years and through those watershed protection plans I produced for the producers, I started reading on the shrubs we were planting. Most of the shrubs were selected for that sediment and pesticide capturing properties. But there was a new trend starting about pollinators, which were quite beneficial for crops. So, reading through the information of the shrubs, we started looking at shrubs that would have flowers, nectar, and pollen for those wild pollinators. And reading on them, I started reading on the honeybee. I didn't know anything about them, sadly. And I went to see Michel, one of my colleagues, an agronomist at the Ministry of Agriculture at the time. And I said, hey, Michel, what's that thing about honeybees? Do you know? Can you help me? Do you have some info? He's like, I don't know squat either. So he said, maybe you could take that class that's starting in 2 weeks. Scott Plant is going to be giving it, and I think you could have some nice information in there. So I ended up with Scott Plant, which is right here in the middle. And little did I know at that time, he would become the president of the CHC, so the Canadian Honey, Canadian Honey Council. Sorry. So I followed a 6-month course with him. It started in 2011, and then I ended up, surprisingly, with 2 hives. And I think that's where it all started, because as you all already know, you have 2, then it becomes 4, and then 8, and then, 16, and it just keeps rolling. So, I had a big choice to make at that time. And because the college with Alexandre Garnard over here had started a new research project. It was a research project to hire a replacement agent for the center of Quebec and Chaudière-Appalaches, Estrie, which are regions of Quebec. They were looking to hire somebody full-time but that would help part-time, different beekeeping operations. So I had to choose between, do I go full-time beekeeping and leave my agronomist job, or do I stay with the Ministry of Agriculture and keep being an agronomist? Guess which path I chose. Yep. I jumped 2 feet in and ended up beekeeper. So I worked with these guys for a whole year. Through that, I learned a lot of experience, and I'm gonna just talk a little bit about those people that worked with me that year. So first of all, there's Alexandre and Julie. They owned a 200 hive operation at the time. He was also a teacher in beekeeping, so I learned a lot from him. There's also Steve Michel and Sylvie over here. At the time, they were about at 2,000 hives, is my best guess. And I want to really bring your attention to this woman here, Sylvie. I was brought here because I'm supposed to be an inspiration to you guys. Well, there she is. She is my inspiration. That lady is a tough nut to crack. She's an incredible worker, and very little men are able to keep up with her. She started the business, my best guess is about 20 years ago. She got the business to 300 hives at the time, and then she talked with Steve, her son, and she asked him, do you want to come on board with me? We could grow the business even more. And he said yes, and now the business has kept growing since. They are specialized in pollination. So yeah, thank you, Sylvie. I learned a lot from Jean and Linda over here. They are very perseverant because they had lots of problems with an associate they had in the past. And he left them with a lot of problems and a lot of debt, but they kept working at it. And now they own about 250 hives, and they are living from that production. And last but not least, Philippe Roux, he's hidden in the back here, and Régent Lambert, they at the time owned 2,000 hives. So thank you, all of you guys. Oh yeah, I was forgetting. Sadly, this research project with the College of Victoriaville had a sad ending. It was the results said it was not possible to hire somebody full time that would work part time for different beekeepers. Why? Because y'all know, as beekeepers, our goal is to install our businesses as far as possible from other beekeepers. Because if we're too close, Nimir's bees are going to come in your operation, or yours are going to go rob their operation, and you're going to disseminate bees or name it, or mites. So being that person that had to go from one beekeeper to the other, for some of them I had to do a commute of 2 hours to get there and 2 hours to come back home. So when I realized that, for some of them I had to sleep over there at their farm, which is a bit complicated because they did not all have rooms for me. So that ended the project that way, but a sad ending often means a new beginning. And that's the new beginning. That's what I'm going to show you, that new beginning. I went to see Steve Michel and Sylvie when the summer ended, and I did a little nudge. Hey, Steve, you know what? I noticed through my summer with you guys that there's a big problem in Quebec. You don't have enough hives. You don't have enough queens to produce hives. Can I help you with that? If you hire me, I'll produce your queens, and maybe in the future we'll be able to sell some. Don't tell him. I didn't have a lot of experience making queens. He said, why not? Come on board and we'll check how we can get that through and make it happen. So I ended up working full time, 6 years for Steve, and I was very often with Sylvie, and we started looking at how we could produce the best of Quebec's queens. We learned breeding selection. We started the last year I was with them. I think we produced around 500 queens, more or less. And I learned a lot of patience in that operation because by the time I left, we had 3,000 hives, and that patience is very important in beekeeping because that 3,000 hive is as important as that first hive. So you have to give the same level of attention to all of them, and it needs a lot of patience, and you have to care and give a lot of attention to detail to everyone you'll see. So learned a lot from these guys too, and through the time I was working with Steve, I started participating in the associations. So I started as a member, and then from a member, I ended up as an administrator on the regional association, the Quebec Regional Association. And from there, the guys asked me if I could go on the provincial association. So for 2 years, I was the second vice president, and now I ended up as first vice president for the last 5 years, the Quebec Association. As you all know, the associations work to protect beekeepers and to get their interests out there so that we can move the bee industry forward for the needs of the beekeepers they represent. Now, I put that little picture up there for you because while I was there, well, I'm still there, but 3 years back, we had a huge event where we managed to merge 2 of the associations in Quebec. We have 3, one that is almost dead. We had the Association of Quebec Beekeepers, and we had the Federation of Quebec Beekeepers. The official association, if I can say so like that, is the Federation of Quebec Beekeepers. And we had that association, the Quebec Association, which was kind of a rebel association. And we had a lot of negotiations with them in order to merge the 2 together. So that was a very heartening moment because that merging meant that we could finally have one voice and be so that the governments would be able to hear us better. I worked with a few teams through the years. I just wanted to show you a few of them. So we've had a lot of fun, and we've had some, let's say it that way, epic battles with the producers union in Quebec, where we have had to fight for the usage of pesticides because, as you all know, as beekeepers, the less producers use pesticides, the better for us. So I think that would be very interesting, but I'll keep it for a next talk because I have a lot of battles that we fought to protect our bees. Now, there was still something nagging at my back because I knew I could take the queen rearing and the beekeeping part of me further. And that's why in 2018, Rayon de Miel was born. As I told you a bit earlier, those 2 hives started 2, then 4, then 16. In 2018, we were at 150 hives, and that's without counting the nukes. And that year, we produced 1,500 hives. I had 1 full-time employee and 2 part-time with me. And it was a challenging year, but oh so gratifying. We are now today at 450 hives, plus the nukes, so 150 nukes. We are the second biggest producer of queens in Quebec. We produce the best queens out there, so we're really proud of ourselves. We have now 3 full-time employees. I think that's the next slide. Yes. So we have Guadalupe, Santos, and Pedro, and I want to particularly thank them because if it weren't for these 3 guys, I wouldn't be able to be here with you today. So no, they are incredible people. are incredible friends, and they are part of what makes Rayon de Miel. We are located in southern Quebec, right a little bit north of Maine in Vermont. And as you can see, Montreal is over here. I thought we'd see it better on the screen, but it showed more on the computer screen. There's a difference from where I am in Montreal. Over here, there are a lot of crops and pesticides. It's a lot warmer too. So the bees have, at least in springtime, 2 weeks prior to mine. So they have warmer climates over there. I am located in the Appalachians, in the mountains, so my temperatures are colder, but I think that's very helpful for my queen rearing operation. I'll explain to you a little later why. Oh yeah, I put that there because I want to show you how lucky we are to be in the Appalachians and how lucky our bees are too. So in almost every bee yard we have this incredible view. We have pastures, fields of flowers, dandelion. So we are very, very lucky. So that's the view we have when we pick our queens. So lucky bees. As I told you, I'm a queen breeder. So last year we produced about 5,200 queens, and that's without counting the cells we produced. My best guess is about 10,000 cells. 5,000 of those went in the mating nukes, and the other 5,000 were sold. So we're quite proud. We are the only ones in Quebec that still use wax cells. It's a lot easier for us, personally, because we don't have to fight with these little plastic cups. The bees eat the cell. Same thing for our nukes and our mating nukes, and our clients really appreciate those cells for the same reason. We have been told we have the biggest queens in Quebec. Is it genetics or is it the cell? I'm not too sure. I'm not able to answer that question for you today, but we have excellent queens. We use these little mating nukes made of wood. They are individual mating nukes, and we are now testing. Maybe some of you will be able to enlighten me. We're testing 6 ways. So they are nukes with 6. They are hive boxes that have been separated in 6 little mating nukes. We have quite good success with those. So we're looking into if we keep going individually or if we turn towards these 6 ways. Why 6 ways? We find the idea of having them all together in the same box interesting because we have cold weather. In springtime, it's a lot colder, and the single ones have a hard time keeping their warmth. So by being 6 together, we get a full box of bees, and they have a lot less superficie that's exposed to those cold weathers. They keep warm a lot better. Now, our main goals is wintering. Our hives have to winter. If they don't winter, they're not alive the next spring. We can't sell anything. We can't graft on them. So that's our first criteria. To that, we look at our spring growth and honey production, which are correlated. And spring growth is very important because our commercial beekeepers in Quebec specialize in pollination. And blueberry flowers are very, very, very early in the season. So they need to have those hives as strong as possible to go and do that blueberry pollination. Honey production, well, it's for beekeepers' revenue too. So we are looking at both, and we are also giving a lot of attention to hygienism. So we are using that nitrogen root freeze test to be able to evaluate which ones stand out, which one we have to eliminate from our selection program. On the side, we look at swarming. Swarming, if the hive swarms, she's automatically out. We can't graft from a swarmed hive. The queen's gone. We also look at different diseases through our hygienism. So if we have a disease in the hive, we just eliminate her too. So On a side note, I was talking with a few of the girls a bit earlier, and we have our bees, our queens have been selected for over 25 years. And I'm sad I didn't put a picture up there. I didn't think about it at the time, but I think it's important to mention him. Jean-Pierre Chapleau, 25 years ago, was the king of queen breeding in Quebec. And he sold his business to another person, which decided to quit beekeeping for personal reasons. And he had incredible genetic lines, and we were able to have a cooperation with that beekeeper and bring back all of those lines, which are probably the best in Quebec. So I have to thank Jean-Pierre Chapleau. We have some beautiful collaborations with some of our clients. So I put you 3 clients up there. Alain Péricard and Daniel. We have Sarah and Guillaume. And once again, Sylvie, my inspiration, and Steve. We collaborate with them because they buy our queens and they bring them to pollination. I'm not, for now at least, able to merge my queen breeding calendar with the blueberry pollination because those two calendars clash. The big rush is at the same time, and so these beekeepers help me test my queens through a pollination. So they'll pick out their favorite queens after 2 years. They'll send them back to me. I'll breed them a few of their daughters, so that they're happy. They get their favorite daughters, and I graft a few of these daughters, put them back in my selection program for another 2 years, and keep the best daughter from my selection, from this hive. This way, I don't only have access to my 450 hives for my selection, I now have access to over 5,000 hives, which I find very, very interesting. It also helps me. They are my queens, yes, but I think it's also very interesting with the inbreeding factor, which we have as queen breeders. We have to care and be very careful. You can do all the breeding and the selection you want. If you end up inbred, you're doomed. Your queens are not going to be good. So, I also work a lot with the Animal Research Center in Quebec, the CRESAD. You're located in the Deschambault, north of the St. Lawrence River. I send them over more or less, maybe some years even, over 200 queens a year. They use them for their selection programs or any other research project that they need queens on. That brings me to this little B-side moment. If you want to know more about my farm, you can visit the B-side webpage where they turned a clip on my farm, so you can see the grafting, the farm, how we work and everything. You'll have a little bit more insight on Rayon de Miel. Let's get back to the CRESAD. I ended up in Epimondia in 2019. I don't know if a few of you guys went there. You did, nice. So I ended up in the VIP lounge at the Epimondia launching in 2019 because I was vice president of the Quebec Association. I started talking with Scott Plant, which I told you a little bit earlier, was the president of the CHC. So, talking with him, he just blurts out, "So, when are you going to go do your master's degree?" Like, what are you talking about? Well, you're the student I'm the most proud of. Like, oh my God, he's really telling me this. Oh, wow, okay. I'm trying to be humble here, but it was really a surprise. And he says, I know you can do it. You went to so much in the last 8 years. I'm sure you can talk to Pierre and you can do something with him. Well, I don't know. Pierre's really occupied, and yeah, go ask him. Just blurt it out there. Okay, so Pierre was the president of Epimondia. He had all these big guys around him, and I'm like butting in, like, hey, Pierre, how are you? How's Epimondia? Great. Yeah, so when am I starting my master's degree with you? He looks at me for like a fraction of a second, and he's like, you can start this autumn. Come on in. I'll be glad to have you with us. I've seen you through the years, and you've been doing quite a lot of impressive stuff. Oh my God! Little did I know I would end up in a master's degree. So I ended up with this incredible team of people. I put you a little bit of their faces, and there are even more that are missing up there. So thank you, thank you. I had a lot of experience in beekeeping. It was a bit harder at first for me in the laboratory. They taught me so much. I wouldn't have made it this far without them. So they're just incredible people. I had a talk when I finally had time to meet Pierre after Epimondia, and we looked at Quebec's problems and what kind of master I could do with my farm and everything I had all around. And we both knew we had lots of problems with queens in Quebec and Canada. So this is a little graph showing you what the beekeepers think is the main issue with their hives and their hive losses. The queens here. Last year we lost 50% of the Canadian hive stocks. So the problem we also have in Canada is that the queen breeders are not able to produce queens early enough in the season. So for me, as an example, I am not able to produce queens before probably the 15th of June. Anisette, if I'm not mistaken, has a good 10 to 14 days ahead on me since he's closer to Montreal and has warmer temperatures. So that's another problem we have because we are not able to meet the spring demands. What are the current solutions to this problem? Well, imports. In 2000, what year did I put here? 2018, but it's very similar to last year. Canada has imported 250,000 queens from different countries. California, we imported from Italy, Ukraine, we imported Hawaii. So all these countries are importing queens in Canada to help us try and save our bees. The problem we have with these is frequently they don't have a genetic that is adapted to our winter. So I think, if I could say so this way, we're kind of running after our tail. We're not able to keep our great genetics that will be able to winter and survive our very harsh winters. So we started talking, Pierre, his lab team, and me, and we had a few solutions that might be plausible. So first of all, insemination. Would that be a solution? Well, not really. It's very hard to inseminate that much queens. Maybe Sue can confirm. We don't have access to drone sperm early in the season because we don't have any solutions to store it long term. So we can't use insemination. We also talked about heated buildings, but that's not a solution either because, as we all know, queens mate flying. So if it's not 20 degrees outside, you won't have mating, so you'll be stuck with virgin queens until there's enough warmth outside. And the third option was banking. So the project became, was it possible to winter a large number of queens in a bank throughout winter, get them out with similar physiological qualities in spring to a control group to keep their quality actually through winter in banking. If banking works, that could have very significant impacts on Canadian industry. It could decrease imports, so that entail would decrease the import of genetics that are misadapted to our winters, and at the same time, it would probably cut our winter losses and spring losses. I went through a bit of literature. There was André Rousseau from Erlam that had published a first article. She had 86% of survival in her queen banks. So that's very, very, very interesting. I also looked through other research. So over here, Classin was talking about, in some cases, 76 and 71% survival rates in queen banks. So there was a nice opportunity. Now, to be able to evaluate, because we already had with our laboratory team, our research team, we had already a few results on survival of the queens. So we wanted to look at what more could we look in terms of qualities for the queens and the evaluation of their not sustainability, but in the evaluation of their quality after wintering in banks. So we took out a few physiological qualities we thought were very important. So the sperm count, the sperm viability, and the ovary weight. Those were parameters that we thought were very important. We also looked at the weight of the queens, and we went a step further. Oops, sorry. With the nutritional, let's call it that way, nutritional status of the queen. We looked at vitalogenin. Why vitalogenin? Well, we all know it's a protein that's extremely important in the longevity of the bee, but more especially in the longevity of the queen bee. That protein is produced through the cholesterol hydroxyzone vitalogenin pathway. Now, the cholesterol is obtained for the bees through their feeding. So from the pollen, and in the case of the queen, it's obtained through the royal jelly she consumes. This is then used to produce ecdysone and juvenile hormone. These two hormones are very important in the regulation of the fat body of the queen. And the fat body is mainly contains the trophocytes and poenocytes, which are cells that are essential. The trophocytes produce the vitalogenin, and the poenocytes produce the pheromones that, for the queen, will induce retinue, so that little royal court and bees, you'll want to lick the queen and cure her and everything. So these parameters were very important, and more to that, vitalogenin ensures the reduction of oxidative stress of different cells in the body, which ensures the longevity of the queen. So, to check all these properties and qualities in the queens, oh yeah, I was forgetting. I had a few hypotheses, but to do a resume of those, well, the goal was to actually compare the qualities of the control queens with the banked queens to see if the results were similar. We devised two protocols to be able to do that. So we had a first one, which is mostly blue, where we did the grafting, the queen rearing, we prepared the banks, we put the queens in the banks and then the control nukes, wintered them, and we took 3 samples of these queens during the year, well, 2 years. So before winter, so number 1 is time 0. We have number 2, which is about 2 months later, just before the entry of the banks in the vault, the wintering vault. And we have 3, which is in beginning of May, at the exit of the banks from the vault. Second protocol, we wanted to go have a look at the performance of these queens in hives during summer. So we had 4 crucial times where we measured different parameters on these hives. Okay, the queen production, so it's quite standard. We use our wax cells, like I told you earlier. We put those in mating nukes. We picked the queens. We put them in little Californian queen cages. These, if you ever want to do banking, these little cages are really recommended. Don't go with bigger screens, smaller screens. If you go with bigger screens, what has been noticed is that the bees will bite at the queens and will pull the antennas or a little bit of the paw, and we all know if the queen bee really needs her two front paws, and if there's one missing, she won't be able to know what kind of egg to lay because she won't be able to measure properly herself. So the California queens are perfect for this because they'll just let the little tongue of the bee in, so they can feed the queen, but they cannot harm her. Bank preparation, it is very, very, very important to have extremely strong hives for your bank. You need 4 boxes with at least 8 frames of brood per box. Then you join those 4 boxes with newspapers, and once they are joined, you will repass the next few days and the next day, and you will merge all of this together to be able to end up with a two box hive. You'll then take your little Californian queen cages and you'll put them all in the center of a frame. They'll be back to back, and you'll have 20 per side. And you'll take that frame and you'll insert it right in smack in the middle of the second box. After a month, as you can see, the bees are really taking good care of the queens inside the cages, and they have all built around the cages. Once we have built that bank, we feed her until she goes inside the wintering vault. Yep. We prepared these the 9th of September. Yep. So this way we start the feeding on the 9th of September until the beginning of November, where they will go inside the wintering vault. Well, beginning of November for the nukes. For the banks, it's a bit earlier. We're talking about the 10th, 15th of October. We don't want them to have too much contact with cold weather because this will mean the bees will cluster. Exactly. They will cluster together, and you could end up with some queens on the outside that would be left cold and they'll die. So that's after a month. To be able to do that project, and if you have some questions on that, you can come and see me later. We built an H system ventilation, So you have an entrance and an exit for air, and you can recirculate that same air in the wintering vault, so you keep the heat, but you can still enter some fresh air for the bees. I put my husband's face there because I got the plans. I visited the beekeepers. He's the one that kind of helped me build this ventilation system. So thank you. I've also had a lot of help from Denis Leblanc for the system. This is an industrial temperature managing system. He helped me build that part. As I was talking a bit earlier, so these are the qualities we evaluated for the project. Have first of all the reproductive qualities. We checked the sperm, the weight, the ovaries, the abdominal size, the viability of the sperm, to see if there would be some differences between the control group, which was put to winter in nucleus hives, 6 framers, and with the banked queens, 40 per hive. We looked at the nutritional qualities, so the physiological qualities of phytogenin and total protein in the hemolymph of the queens. To do that, we used some Western blot, and we used also an immunoimprint to be able to differentiate the phytogenin from the total protein on those membranes. I put you a little picture, well, actually 2 little pictures. This is how we got the hemolymph out of the queens. So this is a little capillary, and you have to stick it under the third gyte of the queen to be able to. It's like a blood test for the queen. And over here is, I wanted to make sure I was not getting actually a mix of water honey, because what I realized my experience with this project is that you really have to keep your queens well hydrated, or they'll dehydrate, and you won't be able to get as much vitellogenin or hemolymph actually from them. So just wanted to show you, look at this beautiful bright yellow color. And this is the honey mixture. This is the vitellogenin and the hemolymph with the vitellogenin. And vitellogenin has that beautiful yellow tinge because it's used by oviparous animals, and it's used for the egg yolk, which is also yellow. We followed the colony performance through the 4 dates I named you. So we checked the weight of the hive. We checked also the brood area of the colony, and we checked the number of beef rings through the season. Now, expected results. I was so badly hoping I could show you the results of my study today. We're this close to having them. So I'll invite you to follow Pierre Giovinazzo's lab website. We will probably publish them there. And what we expect, and just to give you a little glimpse of what I've seen from our statistical results up to now, is that the queens are very similar. So I'm super stoked and can't wait to publish those results. Very similar in terms of vitellogenin, total protein, sperm count, sperm viability. In terms of the queen weights, there is a difference from what I've seen to now between the control and banked, but that's from the fact that the ovaries are not used during winter for the banked queens, since they are not laying. We already have 2 published research papers you can go have a look at. So there's André Rousseau's paper, it's free online. And this is the Mireille Levesque's thesis. She, as I told you, she's about to get it published. So now, why? Thank God I did my table of contents really simple. So why am I doing all of this? Because I fell in love with the little buggers, the bees. They have similar values. I have. The beekeepers do too. Hard work, trust, bravery. I find the bees incredibly brave. They are so teeny, work so hard, and face incredible dangers to pollinate and to help us humans. So, last and not least, they have an incredible way of collaborating inside the hive. If you look at one bee alone, she won't be able to do squat. If you look at the collective, the collaboration they have, you build this whole city, this complete hive. They'll get honey. It's just fabulous to see them work. And that's why my title was We're All in Bees Together, because every one of the faces, and I know I didn't put them all up there, was part of my story. Yes, I didn't tell you my story today, but it's not just my story. It's all of these people's story and more. So we have to take example from the bee and collaborate as much as possible in the hopes of bringing our bee industry further, bettering it, and helping even more our bees. I think that's why I was nominated as the 3rd vice president on the CHC. Quebec Beekeepers asked me to be their voice up there in the national association, because I guess it was from my values. So I thank the Quebec Beekeepers for having that trust in me and showing me the way towards that association where I can help. Some of it all, no regrets. no regrets, no regrets. Scott told me this, and I've kept it in there. Everything you do in beekeeping in your life, don't have regrets. I'll take a beekeeping example just to make it simpler. If you go ahead and prepare your bees for winter and, oh, well, I'm not sure if I fed them enough, well, you're going to regret not taking a look, and you're going to pass the whole winter thinking, ruminating the fact that maybe I didn't feed them enough, and you're going to regret. So, do go through every day without regrets. And even if you're scared, take that step forward and do it. I was very nervous to come here with you guys today because I know my English isn't perfect, but I didn't want to have regrets and not meet all of you guys. And in some sense, I hope through this step I took, I'll be able to merge my story with your stories, because I think now that we know each other, we'll be able to move forward together in that beekeeping industry. Thank you so much, everyone. So the question is, am I rearing the queens in queen castles and then putting them in the banks afterwards? Okay. So yes, we are raising each queen, and it's not a queen, well, kind of is a queen castle, but in individual mating nukes. They are teeny nukes, and we pull that queen, we put her in that California queen cage alone. You don't want to put some workers with her in there. You want the workers outside of the cage to care for her. And then we join all of them together, so 20 per side, and we put them in the middle box. I've used another hive to create the bank. The little frames I will pull from the mating nuke will produce another hive that I'll try and bring through winter. I have about a 50% survival on these hives because I guess the aeration in those hives with the little frames is not the same as the normal frames.
Well, wasn't that great?